Greetings, welcome back to Black Bear News. And if you are tuning in, you might be smarter than the average bear. It is once again very warm here today. My app says 99 degrees, and my thermometer says 108 degrees. So there you go. You know, meteorological temperature and what it actually feels like. You know, it's warm is what I'm saying. And it's probably a little warmer than that inside my studio. I do not have AC in my studio. I don't plan to get AC anytime soon. It is what it is. It's a garage. It cools off fast and heats up fast. And, you know, that's what it is. I have a window. I have a door. Open the door, close the door. Once in a while, we drag the fans out if it's really hot and there's multiple people in the garage. But otherwise, you know, just kind of like roll with it. So let's get into some climate change news. This is from the Rio Times, Brazil. From yesterday, Rio de Janeiro records its highest ever winter temperature. Another temperature record broken. Wow. Must be global dimming. Must be that ice age we're entering. The city of Rio de Janeiro recorded yesterday, September 12th, its highest ever winter temperature, with thermometers marking 41.6 C, or that's 107 Fahrenheit, at the Uraja weather station in the North Zone at 2 p.m. According to Alerta Rio, the heat index feels like 119 degrees. Ouch. 48.5 C. That is absolutely scorching. At 2:15 p.m., also at the Uraja station, the action of a high-pressure system kept the weather stable in the city of Rio this Thursday. The sky varied from clear to partly cloudy, with a record of damp fog in isolated points. So yeah, heating up even in the winter. So some political news. Drone strikes knock out half of Saudi oil capacity, 5 million barrels a day. Can we say, go Houthi rebels, or Houthi rebels? Because Saudi Arabia is really evil, purely evil. And obviously, you know, and we're good buddies with Saudi Arabia. So that makes us good guys. Drone strikes on crucial Saudi Arabian oil facilities have disrupted about half of the kingdom's oil capacity, or 5% of the daily global oil supply. People with knowledge of Saudi's oil operations told CNN Business. Let's see what's going on here. 5 million barrels of... hold on. Everything got dark there for a second. It's okay. Everything's fine. I was just switching my cards. Yemen's Houthi rebels on Saturday took responsibility for the attacks, saying 10 drones target state-owned Saudi Aramco oil facilities and Abqaiq or Abqaiq. I don't know how to pronounce that. I'm sorry. I probably got that wrong three different ways. And Kurai, according to the Houthi-run Al Jazeera news agency, 5 million barrels per day of crude production have been impacted after fires raged at the sites. One of the world's largest oil production facility, people with knowledge of the kingdom's operation said the latest OPEC figures from August 2019 put the total Saudi production at 9.8 million barrels per day. Saudi Interior Ministry confirmed the drone attacks caused fires at 2 facilities. In a statement posted on Twitter, the ministry said the fires were under control and that authorities were investigating. I don't know if this is actually helping this different card. I don't know. I don't know why. No, thank you, CNN. Thanks though. Thank you though. So anyways, I'm not going to read any more of this. I'll link it below. I want to get to this main article today. I'm sure that attack is going to impact, you know, oil prices on some level, and, you know, probably cause some disruption, whatever. again, hooray for the Houthi rebels for taking out some Saudi oil refineries with some drone strikes. Sorry, not sorry. This is from Truth Out. This is not the 6th extinction. It's the first extermination event. This is from Justin McBrien, September 14th. That's today. From the insect apocalypse to the biological annihilation of 60% of all wild animals in the past 50 years, life is careening across every planetary boundary that might stop it from experiencing a great dying once more. But the atrocity unfolding in the Amazon and across the earth has no geological analog. To call it the 6th extinction event is to make what is an active, organized eradication sound like some kind of passive accident. Point taken. This is no asteroid or volcanic eruption or slow accumulation of oxygen in the atmosphere due to cyanobacteria photosynthesis. We are in the midst of the first extermination event. Here. The process by which capital has pushed the earth to the brink of the necrocene, the age of new necrotic death. Ooh, that sounds really evil. Necrocene. I think I like that better than Anthropocene. Anthropocene just sounds like, what is it? Necrocene. Sounds like, yeah. Anyways, for some 500 years, capitalism's logic of eco-genocidal accumulation has presided over both the physical eradication of human and non-human life and the cultural eradication of the languages, traditions, and collective knowledge that constitutes life's diversity. It necrotizes the planetary biosphere, leaving behind only decay. It burns the practically unrecoverable library of life and eradicates its future masterpieces simultaneously. It inflicts not just physical destruction, but psychological grief and trauma as people witness their lands go under the sea, get immolated by fire, and drown in mud. The first extermination event has now produced such a nightmarish world that even temperature maps scream in agony. See Rio de Janeiro. Rio. Okay. The specter of the first extermination might haunt us all, but it does so with stark disparities, mapping the geography of capitals' historical inequities. Small island states formulate plans to relocate their populations already existentially threatened by rising sea levels. Extreme weather events like Hurricane Katrina and Maria disproportionately affect low-income and communities of color, or Dorian, or, Harvey, or, etc., producing far higher casualty rates comparative to other disasters of their magnitude and whose effects are often doubly disastrous, as nearly half of these communities live in proximity to toxic sacrifice zones. Droughts and famines, such as Syria and Yemen, exacerbate conflicts and force mass migrations of people, the vast majority of women and children, while eco-fascists mobilize their effective politics of grievance to turn capitalism's climate emergency to their own advantage, sloganeering about trees before refugees, while calling for mass murder. Are they calling for mass murder? Eco-fascists mobilize their effective politics. Are they calling for mass murder? I don't know. Maybe. There's a link here. I'm not going to follow it, but I'm going to link this below, so maybe I'll look at this later, what they're linking to. If they're talking about the guy that shot up El Paso, I mean, whatever. Loosely associated with extreme eco movements. Yet most popular discussion of the 6th extinction still indulges in sweeping catastrophic pronouncements about humanity writ large, often failing to mention the word capitalism, much less account for its centrality to the historical production of mass extinction. Environmental historian Jason W. Moore's work has shown that capitalism is not merely an economic system, but a world ecology searching to exploit cheap natures, quote unquote, a process that must perpetually reassemble life to penetrate more and more frontiers for potential profit. Capital must reproduce its means of production through its perpetual destruction. Free the environment, free animals, free ecology, free plants and fish and sharks. Because at the moment they are all our slaves, the slaves of speciesism. almost every human on this planet operates out of the basis of speciesism. We're better, and so therefore, we're stronger, we're better, we're smarter. Therefore, everything belongs to us, and we can do whatever we want. Everything is a slave. The entire planet is a slave to human beings. That's what speciesism is. Let's see. Through to the present, accumulation of capital has proceeded by the violent dispossession of outright murder of peoples, followed by the necrotic extraction of resources that destroys its local ecology for the sake of accumulation. Cumulative results of this process, replicated across the globe, have come to affect deep-time transformations to life, the planetary scale through its very erasure. This is how capital capitalizes on its own catastrophes, sustaining the production of life, quote unquote, under its aegis every day and accelerating the death of life across the earth. This is no creative destruction. It is simply self-annihilation. It is for this reason that global attention has turned to the Amazon this year. Perhaps the fires will consume the last vestiges of the fantasy of an ossified international liberal order capable of stopping this planetary crisis. A ghoulish faction of petty autocrats takes stage for the final act, exemplars of kakistocratic decadence and the apotheosis of a toxic sludge of decaying neoliberalism, climate catastrophe, white supremacy, and conspiratorial gibberish. President Trump and Brazilian President Jair Bolsonaro are caricatures of the first extermination event. History's tragedy now runs concurrent with its farce. The smirk of the tabloid huckster, the new face of the banality of evil. But truly there are two sides of the same coin. Green capital is simply the fetishized, phantom-like objectivity of capital's absolute necrosis. It is not a contradictory attempt to sustainably square the circle of endless accumulation or save capitalism from itself. Rather, it is another form of accumulation that sees the destruction capital wreaks as an opportunity for further profit. Branding itself as a solution to this destruction, it further incentivizes its continuation by existing only as another option for accumulation when other avenues are closed off. It would cease to exist without necrotic entropy, to which it owes its reason for being. Damn straight. As its monstrous appetite begins to consume the people who previously benefited from its machinations, capital must seek to confuse, turn incoherent, become conspiratorial, point toward ethno-cultural regeneration through violence, and catabolically eat its body piece by piece in order to survive. Like a hostage taker with a bomb strapped to its chest, capital demands our acquiescence or it will hit the self-destruct button on spaceship Earth, but its threats are hollow. Capital is not greater than life. It will never subsume it entirely under its will. It might dream of Mars and nanobots for new frontiers of commodification, but all it has left to hawk are bunkers. The dire threat of the first extermination opens a horizon of possibility to finally destroy what has precipitated it, the rule of capital. The first extermination event is not the history of some unstoppable common ruin of the contending classes, nor is there any inevitability to its final outcome. The indulgence of a fashionable posture of apocalyptic chic, the lamentation of learning how to die in the Anthropocene, or other such maudlin, navel-gazing elegies for civilization, which means Western civilization, because, of course, its collapse is all that matters. All this kind of literature on our ecological crisis is the greatest victory for the ideology of necrotic capital today. Focusing on a dystopic future allows the privileged to ignore the dystopic horror that already exists today for a great many people on this planet. As philosopher and environmental activist Kyle Powys White writes, many indigenous peoples have long lived in a dystopian Anthropocene. It is here, now, yesterday. They have also fought long an existential war against it. The great historical struggle against capital's first extermination has been and remains the struggle for land and the rights of the commons. Indigenous nations account for less than 5% of the global population while protecting 80% of its biodiversity. Indigenous water and land protectors, whose campaigns are often led by women, face a far higher rates of assassinations and state violence compared to non-indigenous activists in the global north. From the Lenca people's victory in halting the Aguazarca hydro dam on the Rio Gualcarque to the Lumads' fight in the Philippines against the expulsion from their ancestral homes for mining, indigenous peoples are on the front lines of the war against necrotic capital. It is their struggles that create the theory and praxis of fighting the first extermination event. Any quote-unquote extinction rebellion must follow their lead. And I totally agree with that. Because it's not just the indigenous that are fighting the unseen fight and paying the ultimate cost for it. They're protecting, the way of life that we all should be embracing on some level. We live in an illusion. We live in the illusion that has been crafted, molded, shaped, and sold to us, that this is how you're supposed to live. You're supposed to buy, go get a job and make this money, and with this money go buy things. There's no living out. There's almost no living outside of the system in many countries now, right? There's no it's very, very difficult to live off the land or off grid or be a human that's not subjected or, trapped inside technology somehow. And, to break free of it is to be, to conjure up all the voices of, that's not safe. Is it safe? For your safety, you have to be, plugged in. You have to be, plugged into the grid and have the phone and have your computer and have your heat and have your AC and have, and be able to reach the store. And, I remember back in the day, many, many years ago, when I was a kid, when I was growing up, there was still a thing called selling out, right? There was a thing about selling out, that you were no longer viable, right? A band or a movement or, people would get famous enough or become mainstream enough that they would be sellouts. And even before that, there was, this idea that, people who were simple and lived, outside of the corporate media state, like that was a noble thing to do. That was a noble way to be. And that, like, getting in with all the mucky mucks and being famous and living in the city and living off all the, all the riches that one could acquire, like that was selling out. Now there's no such thing as a sellout, right? Everybody, it's totally fine. It makes, everybody's got to live and everybody's got to be, it's all about amplifying your voice and your reach and your influence. And any way that you can possibly do that is totally fine. And if somebody wants to hire you or give you money to make this thing or do this thing, then, that's only furthering your reach and your message. Without actually delineating the fact that money, it impacts you. It inflicts some kind of, you are a man. I'm trying to look for the word. I can't find it. Pulling a Joe Biden. Sorry about that. It hampers you. It hinders you, and the things that you can do and the things that you can say, right? Right now there are only, especially in the social media world, there are kind of like officially okay things to get upset about, or to voice your concern about, or, there are rules about, what you can be all up in arms about and what you can't be. And some things are like totally acceptable, and certain things are like, oh my God, you can't say that. You can't be anti-war. Can't talk about abrupt climate change. Can't really talk about climate change because it's a ratings killer. So if you want to sell out, then you got to cover news stories that people are really interested in. You got to, continue talking about things that, that really matter to people, because climate change is, not really a very, it's not a really sexy topic. Anyways, and I actually heard that recently from a progressive YouTuber that they they do climate change videos every once in a while, but they're not very popular. But I'm going to keep on doing them. Yeah, climate change is not popular because it gets in the way of the whole capitalist machine. It gets in the way of feeling good and being okay. Everything's okay, and there's a future, and we all gotta buy into it. And we gotta keep working and making the money, and building the nest egg, and saving for retirement, and like all that stuff that gives us like a purpose. Unfortunately, climate change and abrupt climate change take away a lot of that purpose from people's lives, and no wonder it's not a very popular subject. But here's the most unpopular thought of all is that, if you really care about climate change, you would understand that, living in our consumer culture is just being a cog in the wheel of the very thing that's destroying the planet. So, first thing you got to do is take yourself out of that culture. And second thing you got to do is urge everybody else to do it too. And we all know how successful that kind of stuff is. But nonetheless, I'm going to urge you all to do it. As I tell people, if you really want to care about climate change or fight climate change, stop buying all the shit. Buy as little as possible. Live on as little as possible. Live like a poor person. Better yet, live like an indigenous person. Live like an Amish person. Live as simply and unencumbered by the capitalist system as you possibly can. That's a really big step forward. And a lot of people on this channel have already done that, and kudos to y'all. That's all I have for you today. Thank you so much for your eyes, your ears, and your conscience. If you would like to support this channel, you can do so at the links below. Until next time, peace.